I quit trying to manifest money, and that's when it came. Neville Goddard taught that the money you chase runs from you, and the money you assume runs to you. And tonight, we look at why letting go was never giving up. It was the real beginning. There is a moment recorded in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 11, verse 24, where it is written, "Whatsoever things ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them." And Neville Goddard would stop you right there and say, "Do you see it? It does not say believe that you will receive. It says believe that ye receive." Present tense. Already done. The mind that is praying for money is proof that the mind believes money is not yet had, and so the very reaching becomes the wall. You cannot desire what you already possess in consciousness. So every anxious reach for money is a confession of lack, and that confession, held long enough, becomes the fact of your experience. This is why so many good-hearted people pray for provision every single day and watch the gap widen instead of close. They are not lacking effort, they are lacking the one shift that changes everything. The shift from asking to assuming. Say it with me. I am at ease with money. I am already provided for. Imagination creates my reality. And again, I am at ease with money. I am already provided for. Imagination creates my reality. If something in you just went quiet and settled when you said that, let it stay. And if you would like tomorrow's teaching to find you the same way this one did, stay close by subscribing so it reaches you. Before we go further, type the words "It's done" in the comments below. Not as a hope, but as a quiet seal on what you have just assumed. Let those two words be your signature under a decision already made. The first key is this. Stop trying to manifest money and start being the one to whom money naturally belongs. Notice the difference. Trying is a posture of distance. It says the money is out there and I am in here reaching. But being is a posture of identity. It says I am the kind of person this already happens to. Neville Goddard taught that you do not get what you want, you get what you are. So the entire chase was built on a misunderstanding of the assignment. You were never asked to go get the money. You were only asked to become, in feeling, the version of you for whom money is simply normal, unremarkable, already assumed. Think of a person who has never once worried about whether the light bill will be paid, not because they are wealthy beyond measure, but because paying it is simply what happens. It carries no charge, no drama, no prayer. It is just Tuesday. That is the state you are being invited into. Not necessarily a mountain of riches, but a calm, unremarkable knowing that provision is who you are. Consider a woman who spent years refreshing her banking app the moment she woke, heart tight, before her feet even touched the floor. She called it being responsible, but Neville Goddard would have called it rehearsing lack every single morning. She was not managing money. She was manufacturing the very anxiety that kept it distant. One morning, worn out from the strain, she simply stopped. She set the phone down and instead asked herself quietly, "How would I feel this morning if this were already handled?" And she let herself feel that, briefly, imperfectly, and nothing outward changed that day, but something inward had shifted its address. That is the whole key. Not a technique added on top of trying harder, but a complete change of who is doing the living. So this week, notice every time you catch yourself straining, hoping, calculating out of fear, and in that very moment, quietly drop the effort and simply feel for a breath what it is like to already be the kind of person this is not a big deal for. That single dropped breath is the doorway, and once you have felt it even once, you know it is there waiting for you again, whenever you are ready to stop knocking and simply walk through. I am the one money already belongs to. The second key is this. Everyone you envy for their ease with money is simply you, pushed out, wearing a different face. Neville Goddard taught that the whole of the outer world is the furniture of your own consciousness, rearranged and given flesh. So when you look at someone who seems to have money without struggle, you are not looking at a stranger who got lucky. You are looking at a state you are perfectly free to enter, because that person is not the source of that ease. They are simply occupying, right now, a room in consciousness that has a door standing wide open for you as well. This is why comparison so often stings. It is not envy of another person. It is a homesickness for a state you have not yet claimed as your own address. And once you see it this way, the sting itself becomes useful, because it is pointing, like a compass needle, directly at the room you are meant to walk into next. Think of the coworker who seems to spend without anxiety, who books the trip, who says yes to the dinner without doing math in their head first. Watch closely for a moment, and you will notice something curious. It is not that they have more money sitting in some account somewhere that you lack, often they do not. It is that they carry a different assumption underneath the money, an assumption of enoughness, and the world simply keeps agreeing with whatever assumption is being carried. You are not meant to resent them, you are meant to recognize them, because their ease is proof that the state exists, proof that it is available, proof that consciousness itself holds that room ready and lit, waiting, patient, unlocked. Let me give you an ordinary picture of this. Imagine two people receiving the exact same unexpected bill in the mail on the exact same afternoon. The first reads it, and something in the chest tightens. The mind runs ahead into scarcity, rehearsing what will have to be sacrificed, and that tightening is not a small private feeling. It is a full assumption being renewed in that instant. The second reads the very same bill, feels a brief natural flicker, and then settles, almost immediately, back into the quiet knowing that this too is simply handled. Same bill, same numbers, two entirely different states, and it is the state, not the number on the page, that decides what tomorrow's mail will bring. The moment you stop asking why they have it and you do not, and start quietly assuming their ease as your own inner posture, you have moved, not geographically, but in being. And the outer money simply follows the inner move, the way a shadow follows a hand. It never has to be forced. It only has to be followed. This week, choose one person whose relationship with money you admire, and instead of studying their habits, borrow their feeling. Walk for 1 hour as if their calm were your calm. Answer one message, pay one bill, order one coffee, entirely from inside that borrowed calm. And notice how ordinary it feels, because that ordinariness is the proof that borrowed hour is the ladder, and every rung of it is already yours, waiting only for your foot to remember it belongs there. I move freely into any state I choose. The third key is this: you must learn to live in the end, not visit it, not peek at it, live there. Neville Goddard taught that the end is not a future event you are waiting to arrive at. The end is a present state you step into now, in feeling, and remain inside until the outer world has no choice but to rearrange itself to match. Most people treat the wish as a distant shore, and they stand on the near bank, straining their eyes toward it, praying for wind. But living in the end means you have already swum across. You are already standing on the far shore, dripping, home, and you simply go about your day from there. This is the difference between wishing and dwelling. Wishing keeps you on the near bank forever. Dwelling means you have quietly relocated your whole sense of self to the far one. And Neville Goddard taught that consciousness always yields the outer world to whichever bank you are actually standing on, inwardly. Not the one you talk about, the one you are actually standing on. Let me walk you through what an ordinary day looks like when this is truly practiced. You wake, and before your feet touch the floor, you spend 2 quiet minutes feeling the relief of bills already paid, not imagining paying them, feeling them as paid. At breakfast, you do not check the account with a knot in your stomach. You check it, if you check it at all, the way a person checks something they already trust. At your desk by mid-morning, an old worry tries to surface, and instead of entertaining it, you simply return, for 10 seconds, to that same felt sense of ease. At lunch, someone mentions money troubles, and your old habit would have been to sigh in agreement. But instead, you quietly hold your own state, unshaken. By mid-afternoon, you notice you have not checked the news for reasons to be afraid. A phone call comes in about a bill, and instead of the old tightening in your chest, you notice a strange steadiness answering for you. Evening comes, and instead of running the numbers one more anxious time, you simply feel grateful, as though the very outcome you wanted already happened earlier that day. And just before sleep, you do not review the day for evidence that it worked. You simply rest, because the one who lives in the end has no need to keep grading the exam. That is a full day lived in the end, not one dramatic leap, but 100 small returns to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Notice too what this is not. It is not pretending. It is not forcing a smile over clenched teeth. It is not reciting words while your body still braces for bad news. Living in the end is quieter than that. It is simply where your attention keeps resting, the way your tongue keeps finding the same spot in your mouth without effort. And Neville Goddard taught that it is this persistence, this returning again and again, not any single burst of belief, that finally presses the assumption down into fact. The far shore is not reached by one great leap of feeling. It is reached by 1,000 small, unremarkable returns to it across an ordinary day. Before we continue, a quiet word, if you want a structured way to practice exactly this kind of day. Every day, for 3 weeks straight, there is something waiting for you at the end of this teaching. Now let us continue. I live today from the feeling of the wish already fulfilled. The fourth key is this. Whatever the day handed you that contradicted your wish, you are not required to keep it. Neville Goddard called this revision. And he taught it plainly. If the day did not serve you, rewrite it that night before sleep. Exactly as a dramatist rewrites a weak scene in a play that has not yet opened. Most people treat the day as a finished courtroom transcript, sealed, official, admissible forever. But Neville Goddard taught that no day is finished until you have accepted it by continuing to dwell on it. So the day is far more like wet clay than dried stone, and the hands still shaping it are yours. Consider an ordinary evening. A woman comes home from the bank having been told, in a flat, indifferent voice, that her loan request needs more paperwork, more time, more waiting. She replays that voice all through dinner. She replays it while washing dishes. She replays it lying in bed. And each replay is not a memory, it is a rehearsal. She is unknowingly directing tomorrow's scene, using tonight's discarded one as the script. Now imagine instead that before sleep she stops and asks herself one honest question. Is this the day I want to keep? And finding that it is not, she simply begins again. In imagination, she hears that same voice, but warmer now, unhurried, saying yes, saying it is done, saying congratulations. She does not merely picture this from a distance. She feels the paper in her hand, hears the particular tone, feels her own shoulders drop in relief. This is revision, not denial of what happened, but refusal to let what happened have the final word. Pause for a moment right now, and let one small moment from earlier today surface. A curt reply, a bill that stung, a doubt that crept in while checking a balance, however small, and quietly, gently, run it again the way you wished it had gone. Feel the new version. Do not merely think it. Neville Goddard taught that the imagination must be persuaded through feeling, not through argument. So linger there until it settles, until it feels more real than the original moment did. Do this nightly, not as a chore but as an author closing the book properly before opening it again tomorrow. And notice, over time, that the days themselves grow quieter, gentler, less in need of rewriting at all, because a consciousness that revises faithfully is slowly training the very outer world that answers it. I revise the day and the day obeys my feeling. The fifth key is this, and it is the deepest one, so let it unfold slowly, because this is where the whole teaching finally locks into place. First, consider the state Neville Goddard called the state akin to sleep. This is not ordinary drowsiness, and it is not full sleep either. It is that drowsy, heavy-lidded, wonderfully passive threshold right before sleep takes you, where the reasoning mind has gone quiet enough that whatever you feel true in that moment sinks in almost unopposed. This matters because your waking hours are full of argument. You feel hopeful about money for a moment, and your reasoning mind immediately raises its hand with objections. It reminds you of the balance, the bill, the deadline, but at the edge of sleep, that same reasoning mind has laid its objections down for the night. Its guard is finally lowered, and whatever you plant in that drowsy hush roots almost immediately, without a single argument raised against it. This is why Neville Goddard placed such enormous weight on the few minutes before sleep, not as a nice bedtime ritual to make you feel better, but as the single most fertile soil consciousness offers you in an entire day. Every other hour you are farming rocky ground. This 1 hour the ground is soft. Second, consider what you actually plant there, and let me make this vivid rather than abstract. Imagine a woman who for months has fallen asleep, running numbers in her head, the rent, the overdraft, the growing list of what is owed, and one night she simply stops. She closes her eyes and instead pictures something small and specific. She pictures opening her banking app and seeing a balance that finally breathes. She does not merely glance at the number, she feels the particular relief in her chest, the loosening in her shoulders. She hears, in imagination, her own voice saying quietly, "Look at that, we are all right." She does this for perhaps 90 seconds, no longer, and she lets the scene be small, ordinary, sensory, not a fantasy of riches but one believable, touchable moment of ease. The scene is not a sentence, it is not the idea of wealth, it is one clear picture that implies the wish is already fulfilled, seen through her own eyes, felt in her own body, as though it were truly happening to her right now. And she lingers there gently, replaying it 2 or 3 times, until it carries the unmistakable ring of reality, rather than the thin ring of wishing. And then, this is essential, she lets herself drift into actual sleep still inside that feeling. She does not analyze what she has just done. She does not congratulate herself. She simply sinks into sleep the way a stone sinks into still water, carrying the feeling down with her into the depths of the night where no argument can follow it. Third, consider why the scene must be small rather than grand, because a scene too large, too far from where you actually stand, will be met by the smallest flicker of disbelief even in that drowsy hour. And one flicker is enough to keep the whole planting shallow. So Neville Goddard taught that the wise imagination does not reach for the mountain, it reaches for the single stone at the base of the mountain. A hand receiving a check, a voice on the phone saying the matter is resolved, a single glance at a number that no longer causes the chest to tighten. One small stone believed all the way through will move more than an entire mountain merely wished for. Fourth, consider why this works when so much daytime effort does not. Because Neville Goddard taught that imagination is not merely a tool of the mind, imagination is God. Imagination is the one and only creative power moving through every life. And the I am within you, that quiet awareness that knows it exists before it even knows what it is the very presence of that power operating in you personally. When you assume a feeling and carry it, undisturbed, into sleep, you are not performing a clever trick of psychology. You are handing the one true creative power a finished scene to make flesh, and it does not argue with you the way your daytime reasoning does. It simply receives what you have given it and goes to work. Fifth, consider a second ordinary man, one who works a job he finds tiresome, who used to fall asleep each night replaying the exact words his manager used when turning down his request for a raise, hearing that same flat voice over and over in the dark. and wondering why nothing in his life ever seemed to move. Until one evening he tried something different, lying there in the heaviness just before sleep. He imagined, quietly, the feeling of opening an envelope that held more than he expected. He felt the paper between his fingers. He felt his own breath catch just slightly. He let a small smile cross his actual face in the dark, and he held nothing else. No calculation of how, no worry over when. Only that one felt moment, carried gently as he drifted under. And he did this not once, but night after night, faithfully, the way a person brushes their teeth without needing to be convinced each time that it matters. This is why persistence matters so much more than intensity. One soft, believed scene, returned to quietly night after night, outweighs 100 desperate prayers shouted once in a moment of panic and then abandoned by morning. The woman in our story did not see her balance change after the first night, or even the third, but she kept returning to that same small scene, faithfully, gently, and the self-concept she fell asleep believing slowly became the self-concept she rose into each morning, until one day the outer figures simply caught up with what had already become true in her, because the world, sooner or later, has no honest choice but to agree with the state you have quietly and repeatedly assumed. So tonight, before you sleep, choose one small money scene of your own, something specific, something you can see and hear and feel. Not the vague idea of wealth, but one believable, touchable moment. Feel it as already true. Let it be the very last thing your mind touches before the dark takes you. And trust that something older and wiser than your reasoning has already begun its quiet, patient work while you rest. I fall asleep as the one whose wish is already fulfilled. The sixth key is this. Once the assumption is truly planted, your only remaining work is to stop digging it up to check on it. Neville Goddard taught that after the seed is truly assumed, impatience is the one thing that can still delay it, not because the law is unreliable, but because a state held with anxious checking is not the same state as one held with quiet trust. And consciousness always answers what you are actually being in this moment, not what you are hoping to become. Think of a gardener who plants a seed in the evening, and then cannot help himself, and returns at dawn to dig at the soil, just to see if anything has moved yet. He is not helping the seed, he is disturbing it, he is telling it through his own hands that he does not yet believe it is alive down there in the dark. And the seed, sensing the disturbance in the only way a seed can, through the conditions given it, simply waits a little longer for steadier ground. This is what checking does to an assumption. Every anxious glance at the bank balance, every quiet reopening of the worry you swore you had let go of, every time you ask yourself out loud whether it is working yet, is a small shovel in the soil of your own planted state. Think of how differently a person waits for a letter they already know is coming, versus a letter they are desperate to receive. One waits lightly, almost forgetting to watch the mailbox, humming, going about the day, and the other stands at the window, and it is always the light waiting that seems to bring the letter faster. Picture an ordinary Tuesday lived this new way. You wake, you do not reach for your phone to check the account first thing. You simply move through the morning as someone already provided for moves. Unremarkably, at lunch a friend mentions their own money worry, and you notice you no longer need to compare. By evening you realize hours passed without a single anxious glance toward the very thing you used to watch like a hawk. That forgetting is not carelessness. That forgetting is faith wearing its work clothes. This is the quiet art of trust. You have felt the wish fulfilled. You have carried it gently into sleep. You have revised what needed revising, and now you simply live, unremarkably, as the one it is already true for, letting the days pass the way a person who is already secure lets days pass, without straining to watch them. This is not giving up on the wish. This is the final proof that you have truly assumed it, because a person still straining has not yet believed. And a person who has believed no longer needs to strain. So tonight, if you catch yourself checking, simply smile at your own hand reaching for the shovel, and set it back down. I rest in what I have already assumed, and I let it come. Here is the whole picture. It was never about chasing money harder. It is about becoming, quietly, the one money already belongs to. It was never about envying someone else's ease. It is about recognizing every calm person as a state you are equally free to enter, because everyone is you pushed out. It was never about waiting for some future payday. It is about living now, today, from the feeling of the wish already fulfilled. And when the day hands you a scene that contradicts that feeling, it was never final. It is simply raw material for a quiet revision before sleep. And at the deepest hour, right at the threshold of sleep, one small felt scene, carried gently down into the dark, does more than 1,000 anxious words spoken wide awake. And finally, once the assumption is truly planted, the only work left is the light, unwatchful waiting of someone who already knows. 6 keys, and yet really only one key, turned 6 different ways. The recognition that imagination is the only power at work in your life, and that the feeling you fall asleep believing about money is the very thing you will rise to find true. If this teaching has stirred something steady in you, something that wants to be practiced daily, rather than remembered occasionally, the 21-day reality shift was built for exactly this. 3 weeks of guided nightly practice, walking you hour by hour through living in the end, revising the day, and entering the state akin to sleep, the way Neville Goddard actually taught it, so that this is no longer something you understood once, but something you do, quietly, every single night, until it simply becomes who you are. It is a small investment, $27, fully protected by a 30-day guarantee, so there is truly nothing to lose, and an entire self-concept to gain. You will find the link in the description below, waiting for you whenever you are ready to stop visiting these ideas and start living inside them. Say it once more with me. I am at ease with money. I am already provided for. Imagination creates my reality. You did not fail when you were chasing. You were only using the wrong tool for a moment, and now you know the true one. So let the chasing end tonight, quietly, gently, the way this teaching found you, and let it be, simply, done.